Come join us up there.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for attending the Village of Rayville public delivery of the audit report. I'm Vanessa Chandler. I'm Director of Communications for the State Auditor. Deputy State Auditor Harry Otto is going to present the findings. And we have Rex Murdoch, our auditor in charge, who is also here. We also have Spence Jackson, our media director, and Alice Fast, our director of local audits. The Deputy State Auditor Otto is going to go through, he'll offer some remarks and background, and then he'll go through the findings and the recommendations. We'll have a little bit of time for questions. The questions need to be of broad interest, not about individual concerns and issues, but topics of broad interest to the community. And we want the audit findings to be constructive and to provide guidance to help improve the city governance.
Thanks, Vanessa. I want to repeat that too. We want this to be a constructive meeting, and when this audit is all said and done, that the village is a better place as a result of the audit and of the petitioners coming forward and asking for the audit. A petition audit is the opportunity for the citizens to step up and say, we want an audit. The statute, chapter 29 of Missouri Revised Statutes, provides that if a certain number of citizens, a certain percentage, raise their hand and sign the petition, basically, here we are, we show up to do the audit. So in this case, I think it took 25 signatures for this audit to be kicked off, and there were 37 signatures verified by the county clerk, I believe in this case. So we began, we entranced this audit on Wednesday, May the 4th. Those signatures were received in December, so we started in May. And yes, the field work began the next day, May the 5th, I guess. We did look at all the concerns raised by the petitioners. We didn't ignore any of the concerns raised. However, one of our duties is to determine the scope of the audit. We can't look at every issue that's been raised. And at the end of the day, we tailor the scope of the audit, and we also have to keep in mind a period of time. We can't go back too far. Records get sketchy, memories get sketchy, so generally we audit 1 year period. So I think in this case, the audit period was for the year ended December 31st of 2010. We would also note anything that arose after that date if we saw it while we were here on doing the field work. There were over 300 hours of time expended on the audit, and that does not include the supervisory or administrative hours that come later, but 300 field hours, you might say. And we have a large range whenever these audits come in. We don't know what we're going to get into. So initially we said the range of this fee, the cost of this village, would be between $5,000 and $15,000. And it's going to approach that $15,000. We're just slightly below that now, but that's going to be the cost to the village. There were a number of issues discovered, but I want to emphasize there's no evidence of fraud or theft was uncovered. That's not an absolute guarantee that it never occurred, but we did not find any evidence of fraud or theft. The current Board of Trustees have accepted and agreed to implement most of the audit recommendations. I think by my count, there are 12 recommendations in this audit, and we'll touch on those. And depending on how you gauge the response, either 8 or 9 of those are pretty positive replies, and we will implement those, depending on how you catch that language. We did a little history on, I sent maybe Vanessa to find a little history on Ray County in this area. And in the auditor's office in Jefferson City, if you're there, stop by, you'll see the pictures of all the state auditors from the very first one in 1820. And the 25th state auditor was a gentleman named Forrest Smith, who is from Ray County. And he served in the office for 16 years, and then he was elected governor. He was the governor between 49 and 53. That's 1949 and 1953. Because we had governors and auditors in the 1800s as well. There is a citizen summary at the front of the report, and the citizen summary is something that Auditor Schweik has started to give you a real capsulized version of what was found, and it's in more lay-person terms instead of technical terms, so someone could look at this and immediately get an idea of what the findings were. And we have a rating system on there. It's a little bit like going to school, or pass-fail. But in this case, we rated the village poor because of the findings that we had, the way it was operating. So the village needs to significantly improve its operations. The report contains numerous findings that require management's immediate attention, and that's why the poor rating is there. Now we're going to look at some of the specific findings, what we determined. We will look at our recommendation, and then we'll mention the response that the village had to our recommendations. And I think there's a dozen of these, and we'll just jump right on into finding number one. And in that, this is the area of accounting controls and procedures. Under fund accounting, we noted the village lacks an adequate and complete financial accounting system. Monthly receipt and disbursement ledgers are prepared from the bank statements rather than actual receipts and disbursements. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking in the past tense in some of this because you'll find that recommendations have been implemented, so it's not maybe fair for me to say this is the way it's happening today, but this is the way we found it when we were here. The village had not established a separate fund or separate accounting for the cleanliness, user, trash fees. There was no documentation to justify the fee and to show it was sufficient to cover the operations. And the village had not established a separate fund or a separate accounting for motor vehicle related monies received from the state. And it did not monitor to ensure that those motor vehicle related monies were used for street related purposes as required by state law. So our recommendation was to ensure that a complete financial accounting system is established, establish a fund for the cleanliness user fees and the motor V receipts, and prepare summaries of monthly receipts, receipt sources, disbursement types. And the Board of Trustees should document how cleanliness user fees are determined and ensure they are sufficient but not excessive. And the village's response was the village has hired a new collector to establish and manage these separate funds. The board will review the funds and accounts at regular meetings. The board will determine the appropriate amount for trash service when the next budget is approved. Keeping with the accounting controls and procedures, 1.2, under bank reconciliations, we found that monthly bank reconciliations were not adequate, did not maintain a running cash balance, so did not know the correct balance at any given point in time, and not knowing what balance to reconcile to. Some outstanding checks were not listed on the fund ledger, and some deposits in transit were not listed on the fund ledger. So our recommendation in this area was to ensure complete bank reconciliations are performed and account balances maintained in a checkbook register. The village's response to our recommendation was, village collector will prepare bank reconciliations using QuickBooks and will present reconciliations to the Board of Trustees. Staying in that area yet under segregation of duties, and I will mention that this is a typical finding in a small community, is the segregation of duties. It's very difficult in a small community with just one or two employees to properly segregate duties, but it's our responsibility to point this out. The village collector's duties are not adequately segregated, and the Board of Trustees does not provide sufficient supervision or review of the work. The village collector is responsible for receiving and dispersing monies, performing bank reconciliations, preparing financial reports. Proper segregation of duties would help ensure all transactions are accounted for properly and are adequately protected. So our recommendation was to segregate these duties. If they cannot, then periodic supervisory or independent reviews of that work. And the village's response was, we will have a board of trustee or someone else review bank reconciliations, an answer we were looking for. Under disbursements, the disbursements were not always approved by the board before the payment was made. The board meetings were not held in October, November, or December of 2010, but the village did disperse $4,682 during that period of time. Some of these checks were signed by village collector or clerk and approved by one trustee. What we recommended here is to review and approve all disbursements and ensure the review is documented. In the village response, the board will document approval of all disbursements. And finally, under Area 1, bonds, and this is what we call honesty bonds. The village officials are not bonded. Section 80.250 of the revised statutes of Missouri require a bond coverage of at least $1,000 for a village collector. And bond coverage for persons with access to assets helps protect the village from any risk of loss. And our recommendation was to obtain the bond coverage for these officials with access to village assets. The response, the village has contacted an insurance company to obtain this bond coverage. Okay, that's the Area 1, which was accounting controls and procedures. And under finding 2, deals with meetings, minutes, and ordinances. Here's what we found in that area. The village did not maintain formal minutes for Board of Trustee meetings in July, August, and September of 2010, and that's required by Missouri revised statutes. Trustees were paid for attendance at these meetings, and the chairman indicated that the July 2010 meeting was null and void because during the meeting he thought he could only vote in the case of a tie, which was wrong. And even if this would have been true, that would not have rendered the meeting null and void, and the minutes should have been kept for that meeting. A trustee was able to provide notes from the August meeting, but minutes were not kept. And no minutes were kept for the September meeting, but trustee indicated a meeting was held. So our recommendation there was to ensure that meeting minutes are maintained as required by state law. And the response from the village has hired a collector to maintain better record keeping in minutes. The next finding in that same area deals with closed meetings. And a closed meeting is a meeting where the officials determine it's necessary to close the meeting to the public because of the nature of the discussion that's about to be held. 3 closed meetings were held without a vote to close the meeting. That occurred in April of 2009 and in August of 2010, and then subsequent to the 2010 year, it occurred in January of 2011. The minutes indicate the topics that were discussed were not allowed to be discussed in closed session under state law. Example, whether to have an opening prayer at future meetings. The state law requires an open session vote to be taken to close a meeting, closed meeting topics to be limited to those allowed by state law, and then specified to justify closing the meeting. So what we recommended there is to ensure that the vote to close a meeting is held, the reason for closing the meeting is documented, and that's done in open meeting minutes, and then ensure that only items that are discussed in the closed meeting are the ones that are properly to be discussed in the closed session. And the village's response to our recommendation is the village agrees with this recommendation and has retained an attorney to ensure compliance with closed minutes. Under 2.3 ordinances, what we found there was village ordinances are not complete, and they're not well organized or up to date. For instance, ordinance number 22.010 says the fiscal year ends August 31st, but the financial statements and the budgets are prepared on a calendar year. Ordinance number 707 was not in the ordinance book, and that one grants the chairman powers to act as the chief of police if no police officer is on the payroll. Numerous ordinances reference the city and the mayor, and it really should reference the village and the chairman to be technically accurate. So our recommendation there was to ensure that the ordinances are complete, they're up to date, and the village responds. The village has corrected the fiscal year end ordinance and is working on updating the other ordinances. I think the final item under area 2 deals with nepotism. According to the April 2011 minutes, Trustee Campbell voted to appoint his wife as the village clerk. The village clerk is an unpaid position, but this is still technically nepotism. Article 7, Section 6 of the Missouri Constitution says that any public official who names or appoints to a public office or employment any relative within the 4th degree shall forfeit his or her office. So our recommendation there is to ensure that trustees abstain from voting when a relative's appointment is involved and consult legal counsel regarding the nepotism issue. The response, the village is a small community where a majority of the citizens are related to one another. The board will ensure all discussions where potential nepotism or conflicts of interest exist will be completely documented to establish no public office holder has improperly benefited from an appointment. So maybe one of the solutions is simply to abstain from the vote when those come in front of a person who has a conflict or is related to a party that's going to benefit from the vote. Under finding 3, we have one item, and that deals with the police vehicle. The village has not determined a plan for the use of the vehicle. This vehicle was purchased in November of 2007, when at that time the village planned to hire a police officer. That police officer has not been hired. The vehicle, I guess you probably saw it on your way in here, located outside the village hall, at the time had a flat tire, had not been started since 2009, and keys could not be located. There was no mileage log maintained to determine how many miles the vehicle had been driven. And so items to consider include cost to maintain and operate the vehicle, the cost benefit of a police officer, and the financial condition of the village. What we did there is make this recommendation, make a decision regarding the police vehicle. And the board replied, we will take this recommendation into consideration. So I'm not sure to answer.
Go with that again, please.
Sure. Our recommendation there is to make a decision whether to use the vehicle or get rid of the vehicle, basically.
We tried it. We tried it already. We tried to tell the people that we'd already tried this city marshal thing. And back then, we needed a city marshal.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had people that were shooting each other and cutting each other. And now, I mean, this is peaceful here now. And we don't need a policeman. The only thing the policeman would be here for would be for revenue.
Right. So it's what we call a wasting asset. It's something the city, or I'm sorry, the village.
$7,000 for a $500 car, I'd say that's wasting assets.
That was the one finding under Area 3. Under Area 4 deals with budgets. The budgets for the village do not contain all the required elements, and the adoption of budgets is not documented. State law requires villages to adopt a budget and to publish that budget. So, for the last 3 years, 9, 10, and 11 that we looked at, there was no budget message with the budget. The budget did not contain actual receipts and disbursements for 2 prior years. It did not separate the general fund from the fire fund. It did not include a summary with beginning available cash and estimated ending cash balances. The minutes of the meetings did not document whether the budget had been approved. The board did not review and approve the 2011 budget, and no documentation exists that they approved the 2010 budget. The village collector said she prepared the 2011 budget after learning of our audit after the first of this calendar year. So our recommendation in that area was that the village prepare an annual budget containing all the information required by state law, document the approval of the budget prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. The village's response was the village agrees with this recommendation and will implement this recommendation. The final area deals with contracts. Our finding in this area noted this: the village does not have current formal written agreements with the company providing trash collection services, and doesn't have a formal written agreement with the Richmond Rural Fire Protection Association for fire protection services. And section 432.070 of the revised statutes of Missouri requires villages, cities, villages, whatever subdivisions have these contracts, and they be in writing. Written contracts ensure parties are aware of their duties, responsibilities, and provide protection to both parties. So our recommendation here was that the village obtain formal written agreements that specify the services to be rendered and the manner and amount of compensation to be paid for these services. The village's response is, the village will work to obtain a contract with the trash company and will consider a new contract for fire protection. Finally, we always look to see and note if entities have received what's called ARRA money, A-R-R-A, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, sometimes called stimulus money. And the fact is the village did not receive any, so we just note that there was no ARRA money to report or to audit. And finally, I think we did attach a financial activity for the year ended 12/31/10 with the report. Now, that's sort of my prepared information, remarks. We have here the guy who had his boots on the ground, literally here in the village, and would be happy to take questions from you at this time.
Just on the back here, the expenditures, they brought in $524 for the fire fund, but they spent $26,900. So where did that funding come from?
They had a beginning balance,
They had a beginning balance?
yes.
That used to be collected in the taxes, and it's not on the tax bills anymore.
It's not, okay.
If you notice, the balance on January 1st of 2010 was roughly $7,900.
And the franchise tax, what is that? It's put it on down.
That, I believe, was from Amaron.
And that's not for their streetlights, that's for just the utility.
That is a utility, yes.
So what is that? Is that designated, or is that just general?
That's just general monies that can be used for anything.
Okay. Just asking. Who was the village clerk at that time?
The clerk was, well, no, the clerk was Linda Campbell, I believe. And the collector was Betty Mitchell.
Are there any other questions?
Have you ever been to a presentation without a council or board of trustees?
Some of you have been doing this longer.
I've been to a few. I've been at the auditor's office for almost 30 years, and there's been a few that nobody shows up from the council or the city.
Okay.
But not very often. Usually
Yeah.
there's somebody there.
Since
Yeah,
January.
and Mary is here.
And since January, we haven't had that experience.
Although I look like I've been here a long time, I haven't. So, I can tell you that this is the first experience for me to not have one of the elected officials. But, yeah.
What's the bottom line on this now? There's nothing in there that has been going wrong and
No,
everything's fine?
Well, the fact that we put a poor rating on it tells the reader that there's a lot that's been wrong. The good news is, generally speaking, the village has accepted a dozen recommendations. At anybody's counting, I think you'd say they've accepted 8 or 9 of the dozen recommendations. They're perhaps a little fuzzy on 1 or 2 or 3. And I think maybe the vehicle might be one fuzzy on. They're going to look at it, but according to the reply.
Bob, did they turn in a petition to you for a special election?
That'd be turned into the limit.
It'd be to the clerk.
Yes, they have not at this time.
No.
And what we like to see, of course, are the citizens to stand up and raise their hand and say, we want the audit, get the findings of the audit, and implement the recommendations that we have found, and make it a better community for our citizens. That's what we hope to see. We look at it as a positive experience. Even if it's not, citizens lose, the auditor's office loses, and it's a lose-lose all the way around. We'd rather see the win-win.
Just one question. Convicted felon, can they serve on the board?
Is there any
I
state
don't
law?
know the answer to that.
I missed the question.
If there were a convicted felon, could they serve on the board of trustees? Is there a state law against that?
You can't get on the ballot.
I don't think, it becomes an election issue
Okay.
as far as getting on the ballot.
We have one.
I mentioned, I might want to
It has to
mention
be in
this.
Missouri. It can't be a felon from another state.
And we had a
Because I
mayor
think
here
we
for
checked that out.
45 years. We had a good city. There was times when we had problems, but he took care of it. And we wasn't in need of money because he took care of that. We could figure that every 4 years our streets was gonna get redone. And we would have our parties on Halloween for the kids. And all these things was happening. I was on the board for 2 terms. I don't know of them ever having a closed meeting. And when something come out that we wanted to know about, everybody in town was informed about it. Now, look here, I'm the only one from town. They didn't even know you was having this.
I put it in the paper.
We would have known it if we hadn't went down to the post office and seen it on the door down there.
And we also send it to the media about a week in advance. We send it to the
Beg your
media.
pardon?
We send it to the newspapers about a week in advance. We also send it to
Ain't
the
nobody takes
newspapers.
the paper out here.
I want to mention this, that the auditor's office, we don't pack guns and we don't have big sticks. We can point out these things, but we don't have enforcement authority. We can do findings, we can make recommendations, and that's as far as we can go. Now, when it gets to other issues that require law enforcement or the Attorney General's office, that they do carry heat and carry.
I really thought.
And we refer-
In fact, and they have a lot of authority that we don't
I really
have.
thought that if somebody went through $32,000 of city money, that there would be something there that you could find.
When was this done, Leo?
They totally broke us.
When was this done?
When was that done?
Well, when Jerry Taylor was mayor the first time, him and Elizabeth, Sharon came. Wise And I forget the name of the old man that was on there, because the old man shouldn't even been on there. Nothing ever happened. That was before I wired your motor.
The auditor's follow-up team will likely be back in 90 days, and they'll look to see if these recommendations are actually being implemented. And we hope that the Board of Trustees and the chairman adhere to their promises to implement these recommendations, and we'll back to check.
Can I
Mayor spent
respond to that?
$750 for a lawyer to write him a letter on how to turn the city of Rayville back over to the county. And I took that letter, and when I took the
Came up to the commission.
When I took the thing up there wasn't any way that they could go through. And I had all the names I needed. So then the prosecuting attorney, for nothing, gave me instructions. And I got all the names again. I should have went ahead like then and done it. And I know these people were gonna get back in office. It would have been on the ballot. Now, Tom O'Connell was supposed to have taken up a petition, and me and my wife signed it, because boy, we're all for turning it back to county.
And the disincorporation, yeah.
I mean, this is something that you would pay taxes into these people, and they're not even able to take care of their own home. And they don't even have a budget for it. So how in the world can they run a city? Their family voted them back in office. Count the votes. You'll find there's 21 votes for each one of them, and the family gave them the 21 votes. Nobody else in town voted for them.
All the auditor's office can do is look at regulation. I said all the auditor's office can do is look at regulations, look at accounting rules, and ensure that those are being followed. And the findings that we have for the audited time period are contained in the report.
Mary
Well,
wants it.
We're old. We're between a rock and a hard place. All we want to do is just go ahead and die. We won't live here in peace until we die. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Mary also had it.
Leo, all the recommendations are in here. I was here with Rex and helping him with the recommendations. We are doing the fund accounting. I have done a budget for 2011, broke up the dollar amounts that need to go into the street fund, that need to go into the fire fund, that need to go into the trash fund. I have got a contract with the trash company. It will be voted on in next meeting, and the trash company is going to take over collecting for the trash. So the village is not going to be out of any money anymore for the trash people. We have like $2,000 that is not paid, and the village is having to pay that. QuickBooks is what I used at Lawson. In 2006, we had someone that embezzled over $100,000. We were $40,000 in the hole at that point. The state auditors came in and they found the findings and we went with their recommendations, what they told us that we needed to do. When I left in December, we had over $700,000 in the bank. I want this village to stay a village. I want it to, not because I'm getting paid, because I'm only getting paid $300 a month, and that is not even minimum wage. And I'm here 2, 3, 4 times a week. I take work home with me.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
How much money did it cost to get a lawyer to draw up that ordinance? That was so stupid that.
it was over $1,000, but
How much?
it was over $1,000, but that was from May, June, July meetings that he was here. It wasn't just for the ordinance.
And an attorney, as villages, I mean, that money is sometimes needed to be spent for attorneys to get the advice they need for some of the things that are happening.
It's not something that they can go look in a book and find what they need. This village is different than what the city of Lawson was, or what the city of Richmond is. It's different statutes, it's different. You can't run a village the same way you do a city.
And with respect to the auditor's office, again, we can't substitute our judgment for the elected officials. They're elected officials as long as their judgment doesn't violate some accounting rule or some statute or some regulation, then we can't second guess their judgment. So we made the recommendations that we believe They need to improve upon, they've
15
agreed
years
to do
ago.
so.
15 years ago, we had an audit,
Mhm,
complete and total, cost $10,000.
mhm,
I thought it was stupid then to have an audit, because you ain't gonna get nothing out of it.
mhm,
Now here we've spent another, what, 15,000?
But people had to
And this
sign.
is, this is not Richmond,
And
this
so,
is,
yeah, so 37 of your, residents
It
here
just
thought
don't
there
make
was
sense
worth
to
it,
me.
so.
I don't think they're told when they sign the petition that they're actually paying for the audit.
well, we pay taxes in county. And we turn around and pay the same cotton picking taxes, fire, Turkey Acres, I can name them off, but all of them in the county, we turn around and pay them for the city.
No, you just pay.
Same taxes.
You just
We're
pay
being
city
taxed
taxes
again.
for, village taxes.
And then we see our money going out the door like it has been going out. And I pray every night that you people will see that Rayville goes back to the county. I really do, because this is pitiful.
We appreciate your coming tonight and taking time to be here. We're happy to present this. If you think of questions later, we'll answer one more here, but even after tonight, if you think about questions, you can contact us at the auditor's office, you can email us, you can call us.
Okay, I got one question. You see over here, a brand new stove, and a brand new microwave, and a brand new refrigerator that Jerry Taylor and Elizabeth bought. Betty Mitchell and Paul had already donated a stove, refrigerator, and microwave. Where'd they go? Nobody knows where those went. I work for the school district, and when you got public property, it has to be put out a certain way. You agree?
The disposition?
There's state law on that, but we don't know where it went. There was things bought in here that nobody knows where it's at. Period. Where'd it go? There was all kinds of things. I think we're missing a computer. I think we're missing a tape recorder.
We have a computer in here that doesn't
Well, I
work.
know you got one, but I also know you're missing one.
There's
You
another
see,
one in here
you
in the
just come in
supply
on,
room.
you come in on the late part of it.
Yes.
And I'm not,
We
I'm
gotta
not,
make
I'm
it
not doing this
better.
at
We
you.
gotta make it better.
Oh, that's right.
We have one more question here.
Yes, my question was, I think Mr. Dale was saying that Representative Nance talked with y'all about where they could do installment payments to pay off this $15,000. Do you know how that's gonna work?
Well, typically, we don't expect a check when we leave tonight.
Yeah.
But we won't forget to send the bill and to take payments as they're made. And we'll post the payments, but, we have a ledger going there for more than one community.
How do we
We like
solve
to
our
have-
problems?
We would like to
How
have
do we solve our
payment in 2
problems?
years.
He's got
And
recommendations in
implement these
here.
recommendations. Go ahead. What'd you
As I
say?
say, we
We'll work on those
try to get the payment
recommendations.
within 2 years,
Okay.
if we can.
And the other one was, one of the sitting board members said in 2008 he was elected. I just was
Am I
wondering,
talking
this is
too
going
much?
beyond,
You're fine.
is it too old?
You're fine.
And in 2008, when he was elected, he was not allowed to be sworn in.
Our scope of audit was the 1 year ended 2010.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
All right.
coming.
Thank you.
We're glad to be here.
I meant no disrespect to you all.
I understand.
Leo, one of those questions can be answered at the ballot box, Leo.
Right, right.
We gotta get more than 21 people.
I voted
We like
for
to
Bob,
keep
but
it
he's a
right.
Democrat.
Yeah, so you, and
Yes, sir.
your end is.
But I'm not a politician.
I'm not even,
I like getting in there too. I wish Dan did a good job.
Your
I'd like to get the city straightened out.